This is the CreaseCast.
All right, folks. Welcome to another episode of the CreaseCast. I am your host, Cody Stevenson, and with me, as always, is Lachlan Irvine. We are actually recording an episode with back-to-back wins. It's a first for the season. It is a miracle. Things are kind of looking up if you just ignore the big, giant, glaring asterisk that it's just Ottawa. And they're basically fielding like their Belleville squad from last year, but in the NHL.
Hey, we are here to have fun today. How dare you?
But we're here
Cody?
to have fun.
How dare you?
We're here to be positive. Positive vibes only, baby.
Yeah.
We can talk about the Canucks back-to-back shellackings, because those weren't just wins. They were like
beatdowns.
Just goal-scoring beatdowns from start to finish.
Absolutely.
They didn't look great when it came to like the actual underlying shot metrics, but they straight up murdered them in the goal-scoring department. So, quick thoughts, Lachlan.
Yes. Quick thoughts. Well, I mean, you put it pretty well there. Just the fact that the Canucks, even though they weren't, they somehow walked out of this three game weekend without I don't think getting outshot. And I think all of them, or at least two of them, they got outshot for sure. I believe.
I feel like it was at least two of three of them.
Yeah. The last two, they were 100% outshot.
Yeah.
And they still got a lot of shots on their own, and they made them count when they got them, even though they were getting hemmed into their own zone a lot more than I would like to see. We'll talk about that more as we go. But you saw the Lotto Line finally come to life, and they did it in great fashion. I mean, a combined 11 points in 2 games, which is fantastic.
It's pretty nuts.
You had Quinn Hughes, who's just continuing to light up the scoreboard. I mean, I think right now he is leading all NHL defensemen in points by 2.
Yes.
By 2 points, which is crazy, and it's crazy that we're not talking about it more. And I think I'll get into that why like a little bit later once we get more into the meat of the show. But overall, the fact is, the Canucks have 3 wins, have 3 more wins than they had at the start of this of this week when everything was on fire. They doused a lot of it in water, which is great for now. Yes, the asterisk is that it's Ottawa, but as we've talked about on the show before, winning games, the games you're supposed to, matter so much more this year than they ever did before.
For sure.
And sometimes if you're a good team, like those the games that are considered the easy points are somehow the hardest to win. Like last year, I think the Boston Bruins won the President's Trophy, and I think they lost every game they played to the Red Wings for no reason. Yeah, something like that.
Or it was like Montreal or something made it to the play-in round, but they lost their entire season series against Detroit, and it was how do you pull this off? Yeah,
almost didn't get in. Right. Yeah. Sometimes for a decent team, those are the hardest points to get, the ones that you're supposed to come in and win, win for sure. But the Canucks didn't bend. I think they didn't bend. They bent, but they didn't break. And more importantly, I think the fact that they came in so desperate for points played a huge factor into why they looked so good in this series. Yeah. And like we've talked about before as well, this, with the way the division is set up, the better you do against one team and the more dominant you are against that one team in the points category, that's a huge boost to you getting into the playoffs versus not making it. So right now, the Canucks are I've won 3 out of 3 against Ottawa with 6 more to go. If you keep that up, that's a huge help to getting into that playoff spot.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny because apparently the Calgary Flames had a closed door players only meeting after dropping 3 against
Toronto and Montreal.
And it's here the Canucks just with their brutal start, and they win 3 against the team that pretty much every team in the division is looking to sweep, and everyone's cheering and being like, they're back, baby, they did it. And it's well, they did, but what's going to happen if they don't sweep Winnipeg or Montreal or Toronto. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you can cheer and be glad that they took 6 points away against a team they absolutely should be taking 6 points away.
Yeah.
But it's still at the same time, you're like, okay, you need to try and channel this momentum that you've generated and start taking points off of teams that like you really need to take teams or points off of. Montreal, Toronto, those are big series coming up this month. There's a 4-game series against Calgary. That would be the time to just try and like lap up as many points as you can in these series as early as possible. They had their little slump start, and now would be a great time to like kind of get in like a mid-season groove kind of. And you kind of hope they ride the wave of momentum. But what are your thoughts? Like, just going.
I mean, if there's, the momentum is, they definitely have momentum on their side now. And hey, if they want to look at even the bright side of what it took to beat Ottawa, the fact of the matter is the Senators have played only two teams before this, the Jets and the Leafs, and neither of them walked out unscathed. Both of them, the Jets gave up a point to the Senators in an overtime game. The Leafs lost their first game to the Senators. Yeah. Right now, the Canucks, out of the teams that have played Ottawa, they're the only team that's come out completely unscathed. Way.
Those points against them specifically, like the fact that you have a winning record against like arguably the worst team in the division, unlike a team like Toronto who's at the top, like lost a game, like you can take that little victory, and that's what you're going to need for like the rest of the 56-game season is the little victories, the little things.
This really is a case of chipping away, chipping away at every single game that you and taking every single possible point you can, even if sometimes that's only an overtime that's an overtime loss or something. Just getting it keeping it as close as you possibly can and getting as many points as possible out of these teams that you're going to see enough of to know what they're like, and you're going to see enough of to know their tendencies and the way that they like to play hockey and try and match that and best that as much as you can. Right now, the Canucks seem to have Ottawa's number. We won't see them again until March, which I think is too bad. Too bad. That's too bad that we won't play them again. But I do think it's good that it's going to be that long a time, because I think right now what the Canucks need more than anything is to really figure out what this team is. Because right now, you're looking at a team that struggled against everybody else except Ottawa. And even though as badly as they dismantled Ottawa, you don't really know what they are yet. We still have a little bit to figure out here. And right now, this next month in February, without playing the Senators at all, is going to be more crucial, because every game is going to be a lot more evenly matched. It's going to be a lot more tough and just a general battle. Yeah. And you need to see exactly what kind of team you have in front of you as you get closer to the trade deadline, which I believe is at the end of the month, because depending on how things go, you need to know. You need to know exactly what this team is before you get there.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like it's a good time to basically separate yourself from the pack. So like a good stretch against a bad team, you will take a bad stretch or like a so-so stretch against like a good team. Like you'll also take that too, because if at the end of the this season, at the end of a 56-game run, if you're closing out the year with like the last 6 of 20 games being against Ottawa, if you're like down in the heap or if you're behind and you need to make up games and make up wins, you're feeling pretty good if you're a Canucks player, knowing you get 6 tries basically to regain your lead and play Matt Murray or Marcus Hogberg or whoever else they have in goal as the season progresses down the stretch of the most important part of the season.
Yes,
that's pretty big.
Those could that really could tip your hand very nicely in your favor. You could really have it would be your playoff spot to lose necessarily if you come down to it and you get that many shots at a team that's clearly still deep into a rebuild right now. There's still a long ways to go for them.
Yes. Well, let's talk about the players that did very well against this Ottawa Senators team. The obvious standouts was the Lotto Line finally deciding to play some NHL hockey.
Everybody just take a nice, and everyone let's all just do a little exercise here. Everyone just take a nice calming deep breath of just relief here. Very nice, right?
So calm.
It's
so relaxed.
Yes, exactly. It is
so peaceful.
So peaceful. It is so great that they've come to life. Again, it's against Ottawa, and that but in this particular kind of a case, when it comes to you being as snake bitten as that group was to start the year, I don't think it matters who the opponent is. I think you get the points where you can get them, and as soon as you kind of get the ball rolling, it doesn't really matter because all of a sudden you're feeling the confidence again that you were missing for a while. Sometimes sometimes a series of games just comes right at the right time for you, and I mean you can say that in so many ways for the Canucks right now, but no more key than with Pettersson finally really getting going again with 4 points in 2 games. And
huge.
Miller the same. JT Miller the same thing. You have Brock Besser who had 3 points, but looked
so much better than the 3 points. Really.
Oh, 100%. He was the best. He was the best of the 3, I think. In the
I would say Miller's 4 points weren't really his 2 goals were they were nasty. That was a guy playing so pissed off that he hadn't really got on the board yet, but Besser's 3 points undershadow or underscore how really fucking good he was in that series.
Right.
Basically putting his line basically putting the line on his back and just trying to get them going, and then power play time finally paid off for them. Pettersson looked to be a little little looser. He didn't seem so stiff and rugged and kind of awkward in his skates, and it just kind of looked like playoff Beatty a bit. You just tell he was more engaged and more confident in what he was doing. Miller still at the end of that 3-game series, even though he came away with 4 points, he still looked like he was really pissed off that he was playing poorly. He wasn't awful, but there were some plays where I don't know, he looked like he just got beat in battles by
hey, I'm happy to see
player unknown basically, and he would just get really frustrated, and it didn't reach the the fever point of him swearing fuck on the broadcast, but you could just tell by body language and just how dead his face was that he was just I'm so mad that I'm not over a point per game pace right now.
Now, to be fair, you have seen the video of him eating cereal, right? That is kind of just his face.
Yeah, that's true.
He kind of looks mad all the time. That video where his daughter's just having a great,
and he's just
and he's like, Mondays, am I right?
Yeah.
And also I would say with Miller, I will say that it's great that he holds himself to that high a standard, because I think a lot of people would say that especially last season, that he played a little bit above his head, he played a little bit above his head. I think that was kind of a question of, is this exactly what JT Miller is, or are we kind of just seeing him play having an extra good year? No, it seems like it seems like that was exactly kind of the marker, as long as provided that he's playing with this group. This is the kind of point totals not only that we can expect out of him, but that he expects out of himself. And it's great that he has that level of confidence and in himself to be able to put up that many points. And if playing pissed off is what it takes to get him really going,
we'll take
go for it. Yeah. Get as mad as you want. Go Hulk out if you want, please. Yeah. I'm always that's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry, and you just see him turn green as he goes there.
The T in JT stands for the Hulk.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Jimothy the Hulkathy Miller.
Dr. Jonathan Tonathan Miller Banner. There you
go. It all makes sense. But it was good that, the top line is scoring and finally kind of looks like they're gelling. But then you have all of your supporting cast too, not regressing or really taking any steps back. And that's kind of usually what happens is you have, your second line or your third line chip in for some offense here and there. And it's just an added bonus to your top line firing on all cylinders. But in this series, everyone was basically okay, we need the Lotto line to start firing, because Brandon Sutter isn't going to score a fucking hat trick every single night,
Really?
no matter how many
Don't think
times Matt Murray is in net.
You don't think so? I don't know.
I
I think he's got it in him.
I was pulling for him to score a hat trick again, just because
Yeah.
it would be so funny. Just like, you know how demoralizing that would be if you're like a Senators player and like the two times that like Murray's in net, like Brandon Sutter just like dangles the shit out of him and gets 2 hat tricks on him. Like, I think Jackson McDonald of Roxy Fever put it best when he's like, "Do you know how bad of a team you have to be to give up a hat trick to Brandon fucking Sutter?"
They're the
like,
first team to do it, so it's a monumentous occasion.
It's monumentous for so many reasons. Like he even says it in like his post game interview where he's like, you know, it's really exciting. Like first one I've ever got in 13 years since joining the league. Which
Brandon, buddy.
I know. It's like you're just rubbing salt in the wound of like Senators fans who are just like they know their team is crap.
Yeah.
But then you hear like quotes like this from like this like old center player who like the market isn't really sold on. Like it's
who
so
played
funny.
in your division for years as well with the Penguins and the Hurricanes.
You should remember him,
your
but
conference.
they like forget.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this guy.
Yeah,
and we were all laughing that we thought like Eric Branson was just gonna go off for 1,000 points after the way Toffoli came in and wrecked everything.
Yeah.
And
in our last episode, we were very miserable and kind of the worst. Which was
we should say second to last because Sutter got the hat trick.
Yeah, that's right.
Sutter did get the hat trick in between, so we came in a little bit more everything's okay, but still a little bit on edge. Now it's just nice and calm. But Goodbranson is it's interesting that he was the second most time of any defenseman on that team.
It is absolutely like mind blowing that like he has still like props to him. Like whenever people like think like criticizing a player's like playing ability means like you're saying like the player doesn't deserve success or money or whatever. Like that's not the case. We went over this in our last episode. We can make fun of like how bad he looks on the Senators blue line and how badly he gets caved and all that stuff. But like, that's not me trying to say like, fuck this guy. I hope he fails and he looks like an idiot and loses all his money. And then he invests in GameStop stock and he loses everything he had. Well, that's not the case, but it is just amazing. Someone who's, you got to learn. I'll teach you at the end of the episode. But Eric Goodbranson, like it is just amazing that a player who's had like the same flaws basically for the last 5 years and he just keeps getting these jobs. Like it's that meme of Breaking Bad, like that he can't keep getting away with this where you're just like, what did the Senators actually think was going to happen?
Yeah.
When they signed Goodbranson and paired him with Thomas Chabot, like, did they think like Chabot's great. Don't get me wrong. He's
fantastic. I mean, did you see that goal? That goal was spectacular. That was very much that was very much a moment of a great player going, okay, I've had enough of this, and taking it through the entire team and making them look like minor leaguers. Like that was a great individual effort from Thomas Chabot. That one goal that they had,
for sure. So I'm looking at his stats right now. So in very prescribed ice time, the Bo Horvat Hoglander line generated 15 shot attempts against with Goodbranson on the ice, and he spent maximum of 5 minutes on the ice with them. Oof. He spent 3 minutes and 46 seconds on the ice facing off against Hoglander, and Goodbranson faced down 15 shot attempts in 3 minutes and 46 seconds of ice time at 5v5.
Oh no!
Like
now, this is a team that did employ Cody Ceci for a very, very long time, so that's just kind of par for the course for them.
Sure, the bar is so low, that it's just like we'll take whatever we can get. But it's just like if you're Pierre Dorion or whatever, like I know he's probably got some internal like cap budget that he's stuck to, and he can't really he's basically stuck with what he's got and like who he can go after.
At least for the time being, yeah.
Yeah, but like that's just like pathetic. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you're going out of your way to pay him like a giant contract and then you throw him on your first pair And the first thing he does is give his teammates shit for playing so shitty for the last 2 years.
Oh,
And
I
then he
forgot
has a
about
performance
that.
then he has a performance like that in like 3 of the games. Like that is
You're not exactly endearing
so
yourself.
bad. And
Oh
like
yeah.
by comparison, I think Shabbat's numbers are like the complete inverse when he's facing against like the top line. Like he caved in Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson at 5v5. Like he was like 17 to 3 in shot attempts. Like
He's an exceptional
obviously there's
defenseman.
no finish on that team because like I don't
There's
know.
a
Like,
few. You got your few pieces. You got Brady Tkachuk, you got Josh Norris, you got Tim Stützle, you got Drake Batherson, and that's but they're all young and they're all working, and that's kind of and they're
and
developing.
Stützle is
They're
still like a
not.
years away from being like
He's gonna
a
be great one
legitimate
day.
center.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
gonna be great one day. It's just not. It's not there yet.
It's
It's
clearly
not.
not there. And it's just like it's kind of like the argument people had about Niels Hoglander starting in the NHL right away, where people were like, is he going to be ready? Let's not go overboard and think he's going to be like a Pettersson that like just changes the way the Canucks play hockey. Obviously, he
That's
came in and blew everyone's brains away and has
yeah.
been legitimately like the second best forward. Like arguably for the ice time that he gets, he is probably the second best forward for the Canucks, like in
So
all
far this
10
year.
games.
Oh
He
yeah.
had
What I would
his
totally agree with that.
his
Ahead of him
game.
being like Bo Horvat. That's pretty much it.
Oh
Right?
yeah, Horvat's number one. He
Yeah.
is straight up like just hard carrying the team basically through their slump. But
Fantastic.
the Wednesday game, the first game against Ottawa, Hoglander was like, I don't know, like he didn't look nearly as peppy in his step. But then the Canucks got out to like their 3-1 lead or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, like he was like, hey, I don't want to be forgotten. And so he started turning it up and was like laying hits and shit.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's exactly what you want to see from a player like every game. And the fact that like you could almost see like the gears turning in his head where he's like, oh, I need to be like way better than this. And then he
Yeah.
has his game on Thursday night where he is just dominating, like
Yeah.
completely dominating the Senators anytime he touched the ice.
Yeah. He had the one assist. He had the one assist in game 3, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he had the one assist and like the kid is like,
But he looked better than that. Yeah.
he looks so much like kind of like Besser's three points across 3 games, like
Right.
just clearly performing so much better than his point totals would indicate.
Yes.
Like Hoglander's the same case. Like he's just like an analytics darling. Like he's just like unbelievable anytime he's on the ice. He's just controlling the shot share. He's creating rebounds. He's stealing the puck, and his like defensive reads too are so clean. Like his back checking and like he was barely on the penalty kill, and he laid a body check, knocked some guy over, stole a saucer pass midair, and then cleared it
Yeah.
perfectly
And
to Murray's stick. Like
he is very much becoming a player that you can put in any single scenario and will make things better. And
Yes.
that PK is definitely one that needs life. He might be the key to fixing that. He takes a lot of I think he gets a good amount of like shot blocks. He gets a good amount of shot blocks. We talked about that.
Yeah.
He's a good fit for that PK unit if you put him out there, especially considering they've had some really tough moments.
I was gonna say like, oh sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. He looked really good there, and then he's almost single-handedly really pulled Tanner Pearson out of his funky start to the year. Tanner
Straight
Pearson's
up.
a guy I wrote an article over the offseason talking about just what a quietly great year he had with the Canucks,
Yeah.
especially like just how like consistently solid he is in both at his own end of the ice and at the other end, and what a great line mate he was for Horvat. Like he rarely makes a lot of mistakes. This year he started off a little bit weird. He had a couple games where he made a few like rare had a couple mental lapses here and there that that were very uncharacteristic of him, and wasn't getting the puck to bounce his way. Hoglander really pulled him out of that one goal I think in the second game that he set up that was gorgeous.
Yeah, that was nuts.
That was unreal. And then now Pearson's hitting a stride again. He's got 5 points in 10 games, and he's looking good doing it.
Yeah, it also helps that he's in a contract year. So like you have this perfect storm where it's like he's in a contract year, he's looking for a raise or like an extension or whatever. And then you have this wonderkind coming in And like he's the perfect foil to that Horvat and Pearson line. Or sorry,
Yes.
the Pearson and
Yeah.
Horvat.
You had it right.
You know what I'm saying?
You had it right. You had it right.
And just like the fact that like there's instant chemistry there. Like how many times have like a player come up like from a call up from like the AHL or like whatever, and people are like, "Oh, Brendan Leipzig's going to be the winger for Horvat and Pearson or whatever on that second line."
I remember that.
And it's just like it was
that
never
really
a fit.
backfired.
Yeah, like there's such a clear mold that they need for those two players. Horvat especially, like he needs like an aggressive, like tenacious winger who's going to battle for on every shift and for every puck.
Horvat just needed consistency more than anything.
And that
he kept
too,
getting his winger switched every 20 minutes. And
and that's a problem.
Pearson was the first guy to come in to actually get solid time with him, and then you had to fully kind of find
he
a
has
spot.
Two-way game.
And now finally Höglander seems to have sealed it shut for the next however many years, hopefully. Many years.
It's like found money for Travis Green basically, because this entire time, like the past like few years, they've basically been like desperate to get like a forward who has a two-way game and can play with Horvat in a shutdown role. And typically that's been Louis Eriksson, where they've had, this kind of like, okay, Horvat, you're going to be our matchup center. Maybe you'll score. Maybe you won't. You probably won't because you got Eriksson with you, but we just need you to tough out the hard matchups, at least until we get you a better winger.
Yeah.
And here they have this like 20-year-old kid where Travis Green's like, I have no idea, like straight up says in the media availability, like I had no idea what to expect from Höglander. I was concerned about his defensive game and had no idea what to expect from him playing. And he comes in and he's just like Horvat. He's got a completely reliable two-way game. He's like completely fine defensively, and he's like a rookie playing on North American ice surfaces for the first time in his career. Like that is found gold. And the fact that this is the first year of his ELC, if he can keep this up and we're looking at like, 20 games of him being the team's best forward, like that is just like
huge.
Kudos to Brackett and Jim for getting that kid in the second round. Like that is such a gold mine for them. And then you think like down the line, you're going to have a line of Podkolzin, Horvat, and Höglander possibly.
Oh, that's right.
They're going to just demolish teams with puck possession. It's not even going to be fair.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, you hope that's what's going to happen. I mean, Podkolzin, it's still, there's still like a couple questions about how things are going to go with him, especially right now. I think Chris Faber had some stuff posted about whether or not he will be here this season. Which is still a possibility. It's still a possibility that he does end up showing up for like the last couple games in Vancouver, possibly with the playoffs as well.
If we keep getting schedule delays because of COVID, he might play a regular season game.
Yeah,
I think the KHL season's done like April 23rd or 30th or something, which is like kind of coincides with the final 2 weeks of the NHL regular season. So he would have to come here and quarantine for 2 weeks. So you might get him in a game or two. But if there's game delays, as we've seen with some teams we'll talk about later, he could get in a couple games, and then you might actually see the po-ho-ho line.
My interest actually in that particular case, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there, is if he signs his ELC but he doesn't start until the playoffs, does it burn a year? Does it burn the full year? Because I almost think I would imagine it doesn't. I would imagine you could if you papered him.
I think you do. You do. Because remember, there was like a whole thing where it was like Quinn Hughes was done in the NCAA. He came and he played 8 games, and it was like if you cross the like 6 game threshold or 7 games or something, then it wipes the first year off your ELC, and that's why he's synced up with Pettersson.
Right, but the playoffs don't necessarily. Technically, you're not getting paid during the playoffs. Technically, your contract is regular season only. Yeah. There's like bonuses sometimes attached to playoffs, but I don't think officially in terms of your contract, it counts. So theoretically, I think as long as they're papered onto your roster in time for that game, you might get the full. You might still get like you might.
Oh, could you imagine?
What happened with Matt Murray? Because Matt Murray won a Stanley Cup before. I think he'd only played like one game or something. I don't think
he barely played.
He had officially played. I'm gonna look that up right now. I'm actually really fascinated. In terms of players who have also just done really well, and this is almost more quietly than Nils Höglander, was Quinn Hughes.
Just a guy that casually lit up the league and is like leading the league in like assists or something like that, and you wouldn't even expect it.
Yeah, but because we've been so focused. I think we've been so focused on Pettersson not getting going and Höglander being so good. And Bo Horvat just playing a lot
doing everything he can to carry the team,
but doing doing everything he can. That Quinn Hughes has almost flown a little bit under the radar for us, and that's partially I think due to the fact that he is just so good that we almost just kind of have become accustomed to how great he is. That this is just how he is.
Yeah, you just don't even notice that he's got the most points of defensemen in the NHL.
Yeah, because no big deal at all.
Because granted, the Canucks in general, to start the season, they all looked like they were just out of sorts and they looked bad. Hughes looked like he was kind of playing hurt, like he didn't kind of have the edges that he used to have. He was getting beat all the time. He was falling over all the time, and meanwhile, in spite of, looking objectively like he's physically not playing well, he's leading the league in points for defensemen. And it's just it's actually unreal that he could pull that off while he could be this offensive dynamo while struggling defensively, but also be leading the league. That's so nuts.
Yeah. He hasn't even looked all that bad in his own end. He's had some growing pains.
Shabbat walked him pretty bad. That was
Shabbat, but even that's a case of elite walking elite.
Elite versus elite.
Yeah, exactly. It's
given his minutes that he plays too.
It's basically rock paper scissors in that department, right? Where it could very much somebody could just draw rock and the other could draw scissors, and it just goes the wrong way for them. With Hughes, he's had a couple iffier moments. Everybody started off a little bit stale, but he's still done.
He's been consistent.
He's been consistent, and he's been really. He's been moving the puck well. He's really been. I mean, he's racking up the assists like nobody's business. He's really has been a huge, for setting up and bringing a lot of guys back to life that were really struggling, especially on the power play and everything, where you finally got some guys going there. Yeah. Hughes has been great, and he's been on according to this is a tweet by Grady Saz. Quinn Hughes has been scoring at a point per game pace over his last 27 games, dating back to the playoffs. 3 goals, 24 assists, which is just unreal. And do you remember during the playoffs when they were announcing the NHL awards and they gave it to Cale Makar, and they gave the Calder to Cale Makar instead of Quinn Hughes? Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember how that happened? Funny. That's really funny. That was hilarious.
We can litigate that right now. I didn't agree with the Makar thing getting the Calder purely because he was on a stacked team that was stacked all season. It's of course he's gonna look good when you're basically being prescribed minutes exclusively on a pairing with Theodore, whoever it was, not Theodore.
Eric Johnson, Ian Cole. They had a pretty decent defense last year.
Whoever it was, but he's
now they have Bowen Byram.
He's basically sharing all of his ice time with the top line in the league.
Sam Girard, was that the other one?
Yeah. Sam Girard.
I think that's who I was thinking.
I feel like that's who it was. But anyway, you have Hughes who's playing with Chris Tanev, and he's inflating Tanev's numbers dramatically by just virtue of being an absolute ace.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because now I would say whereas would they rewarded Makar for being an offensive dynamo on like a stacked team last year, they're probably going to deny Hughes for being an offensive dynamo on a weak defensive team this year, when last year Hughes was arguably the better two-way defenseman than Makar because of the kind of team he was playing on.
Right. And he was old, and Quinn Hughes is younger too. So that should have added to it, which I always think is kind of I think that helps a little bit. I mean, I think it's only like 1 year, but I made a whole joke that I made a whole joke during one of the episodes that he's basically Cale Makar is basically an old person at this point, basically a senior citizen and should not have been allowed to win. But
that's fair.
That is
the Panarin principle.
Yes, exactly. And then Jordan Binnington getting mad about losing the Calder to Petey, even though he's like 27, like 26, 27. Like, no, you're not a rookie anymore. You shouldn't be able to win. You shouldn't be able to win past like 22, if anything. Or like if you're off your if you're off your entry level contract, you shouldn't be able to win. You should absolutely not be able to win.
If you're like on an RFA deal or whatever, like you shouldn't count personally.
You should absolutely not count. I think like, Jordan Binnington was on a second or third contract by that point, like something ridiculous.
Yeah, like rookie should literally be for like what the word stands for. It should be, okay, it's a guy who is like U22 or something coming to the NHL out of junior, not
if you've had multiple seasons playing at the AHL, you're a professional already.
AHL, KHL, SHL, you know what I mean? Like,
I get that it's rookie of the NHL.
But if you're jumping from a pro league that you've played in for the last 5 years into the NHL, you're not technically a rookie. You've had pro experience, and it kind of takes away from the rookie like moniker. Mm-hmm. It would almost be better like have a rookie of the year for U22 players coming from their junior leagues or the NCAA, and then have some kind of award that's basically like newcomer of the year, basically, because then that's more like broadly speaking, like some guy makes his debut on a team and after playing, a bunch of bum years in the AHL, and he just like becomes a fan favorite and like lights up the world or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Give it to that guy.
Yeah. I will say also, Cale Makar did give me the answer to the Carlson question, because he didn't play any regular season games before for the Avalanche when he signed.
Oh, that's right. He debuted straight in the playoffs.
He debuted straight in the playoffs, but it did count towards his burning the first year of his contract. So yes, no matter what, even if it's the playoffs, it would burn Pud Colson's first year. Although maybe that's different depending on whether or not you come out of college versus somewhere else. I know there's some weird different loopholes and legalese based on if you come out of, say, the NCAA versus even like the junior leagues or like the KHL or something. So maybe I don't know, because I don't know, but we'll find out when we get there. But Quinn Hughes, just it's very much one of those things where we're already getting to the point where we kind of don't appreciate how great he is on a nightly basis. And I'm admittedly very guilty of doing that in the past, where I have not appreciated players as much as I really should have, just because I got so used to them being amazing every single night. Like, what must it feel like to be, say, like, a Pittsburgh Penguins fan and have Sidney Crosby on your team for 13, 14 years? Like, that must be incredible. Like, that must be... But you also must be just so accustomed to watching Sidney Crosby do absolutely ridiculous things every single night that you just forget what you have and, like, forget how great you have it until he eventually retires, right?
Yeah, it's like the bar raising thing, right? Like you had Elias Pettersson like over a point per game in the playoffs. You had Quinn Hughes over a point per game in the playoffs. Like they set such a high bar like for themselves that like, of course, like in the start of this season, when they're not going right away, every fan is like, oh, they're garbage. Like how could they not be playing at a point per game pace forever? Like their skill is so unbelievable that they've like elevated the bar higher than like any prospect before them had ever raised it. Yeah. Because like even the Sedins, like they didn't really start raising the bar until they were like 27, 28. Like
it took them years
forever
to get to that
point. Yeah. And then you have these two kids on their ELCs raising the bar for what fans should expect of their abilities. And now you have like a kid like Niels Hoglander who in 10 games is like already raising the bar like to like unfathomable heights.
And he's doing it not even as like a top flight prospect. He's doing it as like a second round
pick on a two-way shutdown line. Like that's how good he's been.
Still good pick, still good, like still incredibly high pick, but like it's still kind of feels like you somehow really cashed out at a much higher rate just because of how quickly he has turned into a full on NHLer, like bona fide NHLer at this point.
Mm-hmm. So based on like Quinn Hughes like offensive stats, do you think like just the way that he's been playing to start the season after 10 games, do you think that's enough for him to be in Norris consideration this early?
Yeah. I mean, we can have the whole debate on what should constitute a Norris winner another day, because I mean, frankly, what it's become more or less now is it's not so much are you the best defenseman, it's more kind of are you an okay defenseman?
Are you better than Drew Doughty?
Points? Are you an okay defenseman that gets a lot of points?
Yeah, like are John you better Carlson, than Drew Doughty?
Right, exactly. John Carlson won last year, and I think he had the most points of any defenseman, but was also like really bad in his own end.
The Capitals in general were bad in their own end. That's why I was like, it's just like who can score the most as a defenseman, which is
which kind of misses the point entirely.
Yes.
And that's why I think nowadays, even like as like a brain exercise, the Professional Hockey Writers Association has what like the Rod Langway Award, which is like for specifically the best defensive defenseman.
Yeah,
it's not an official award. It's just something that they vote on just for here. Let's see who would have won if this were an official thing. Mm-hmm. But I mean, generally speaking, Quinn Hughes is pretty darn good in his own end most of the time. He's pretty good. Most of the time, he's struggled to start. Again, he struggled to start this year.
He's struggling now because he's basically all the minutes that would have been prescribed like to Tanev. Like he's taking like double duty. He like gets double shifted and will have like a minute 40 on the ice and then run the entire power play on his own. Like the kid works.
I mean, multiple times he's played minutes with Tyler Myers, who tries to do the same thing as Quinn Hughes and tries to like pinch and get into the scoring, but taller, and when he does that, it leaves them super vulnerable going back. So I think Hughes' numbers have kind of been a little deflated just by unfortunately getting stuck on matchups a lot of times before Jordy Ben came back. With guys who are more inclined to try and do the same thing as him, and it forced him it got him in trouble by proxy, kind of. It made his numbers like a little bit. Although he has been caught a few times making errors. I'm not going to say that he hasn't made any.
Sure, but you can chalk it up to the whole, like, he's playing like a ton of minutes and like
sometimes he gets
with defensemen where he's like they just don't gel. Like him and Myers do not gel.
No, because they're both trying to be because both of them are trying to be the exact same type of defenseman at the same time, and you can't do that. It really is a puzzle that way, how you have to kind of make sure that if this guy plays this way, you can't play him with this other guy. It's got to be with one of these two or one of these two. Mm-hmm. And now that they have Jordy Ben there, who's done really well, surprisingly well, playing on a first pairing with Hughes. But it does fit more. It does make sense that it fits so well because Jordy Ben is much more of I'm going to stay back and just I'll lay back. It's fine. I'm your defenseman. I get that these guys are better than I am. I'm going to expedite whenever I get the opportunity to. And it's worked really well that way. Based on the current constraints of what a Norris Trophy candidate is, I would say Quinn Hughes should be at the top of the list right now. Like he absolutely should be in the conversation and considered. If you change the way that you vote for the Norris, maybe it's a little bit different, but even still, based on how decent he usually is in his own end,
that would be very Canucks luck.
This is the year that everyone decided, now we're going to vote based on being great in your own end. I tried
to look at expected goals for. That's why.
All of a sudden, literally all the oldest writers of you know what? We really looked at the analytics this year. Yeah. The analytics this year, and we gave it to I don't know, John Klingberg.
John Klingberg, who's unreal.
He's unreal in that sense. Yeah. And so it'll just completely go against poor Quinn. Yeah. But no, I think I'd be interested to see how much noise he gets for it, especially because writers this year, and the awards are going to be weird this year because people aren't necessarily watching as much of other teams anymore because you're not.
They don't have to.
It's so you don't have to because you're so divisionally set until the playoffs come around, until the third round of the playoffs come around. That Quinn, unless people like us kind of start making noise for his consideration. He might be less inclined to get it. So I would say 100% he should be in the Norris conversation. What about you? What do you think?
I'm in the same boat. I think he will be. I hadn't even factored the fact that like PWHA members and like all these like critics and people that get to vote like might not even be watching. And then I think we talked about this maybe in our first episode or something like that, but someone voting for I think the Hart Trophy, like the geniuses,
people voted
the geniuses that voted 2 players from the same team,
Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl for MVP, which completely missing the point of what a most valuable player to his or her team is.
Yeah, so a part of me is like, okay, Hughes is probably going to be top 5 in defenseman points by the end of the season based on how he's playing, even like with all the minutes he's having to chew up. But then I think of those guys who voted for Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid to win the MVP together. I think, okay, that person who voted is going to, as they were quoted as saying, I looked at so-and-so players plus minus and made my decision on the league MVP on that. And I think Quinn Hughes is probably going to have 55 points at the end of this year, 60 points. And they're going to see minus 14 on his plus minus and be like, oh, that means he's bad. So no, you know what I mean? Yeah. He could have an unreal stat, but like you said, they might not be watching and might boil it down to what's a plus minus. Okay. Yeah. That's all I need to see.
Right. You hope not. You hope
not because you want to see him rewarded for his play.
Right. And that is in the minority. Not a lot of people voted for Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
But the 5 that did is
1 and 2. But the 5 that did, they're a concern. But you never know because I think it changes it does change who votes year to year. But you do have to hope a little bit. Actually, I wonder if their case would be, I guess their case would his case would almost be theoretically helped this year just because they're playing a lot more Eastern Conference teams on a more regular basis. They might, and there's a lot more start times. There's a lot more 4 p.m. start times here that normally they wouldn't watch because it's 10 p.m. on the East Coast when the Canucks start their games. That you hope. They have to go to bed. I hated that so much. That's half the reason why Cale Makar won and not Quinn Hughes, because those old people on the East Coast were all going to bed at 10 p.m.
At 9 o'clock when the Central games were over.
Goodness, look at the time. Let me have my Werther's original and go to sleep. That's classic. Yeah, let me put my false teeth in my glass and go to bed, in a glass of water and go to bed. But no, this is...
Speaking of false teeth, we're going to have our guest on today. It's Brian Burke.
Oh, no. Wait, what? You didn't tell me about this? No.
Yeah, oops.
Okay, but... if we want to get into the other players who are just having quietly good years, Tyler Motte.
Yeah, Motte Girl Summer, baby.
It's year round now.
I'm looking at it right now, and the skaters for the NHL goal scorer lead is Tyler Motte at the top of the heap.
Wait, what?
Because obviously there's 55 players that are tied with 5 goals or whatever.
Is there really?
But you'd think they'd have it alphabetically, or maybe they do. No, they don't.
See. And I didn't see this. Hold on. What?
So if you look at skaters' goals, it's Mikko Rantanen with 6, Draisaitl 6, Besser with 6, Pacioretty 6, Toffoli 6. And then it's Joel Eriksson. Yeah, Joel Eriksson with 5, and then Tyler Motte with 5. And it's it's not alphabetical, so he shouldn't show up here. Reasonably, since Nick Ehlers has 5 and he's below him, so he'd actually be up there next to Joel Eriksson. So it doesn't actually make sense. So it's
he'd still be ahead of Van Riemsdyk, though.
You just raise your hand and you just go hell yeah,
hell yeah, Tyler
go
Motte.
for it, dude. no assists, all goals, all action.
He's a, what
Killer
can we say?
pen-
He's a
like,
sniper.
ultimate
What are you
penalty
gonna say? What are
killer.
you gonna do?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's Patrick Laine.
Yeah.
That's gonna be my next article. Why Tyler Motte is as good as Patrick Laine.
Yeah. Don't then the
Don't
NBA
at
article
me.
just says don't at me, bro.
Yeah, don't at me, bro.
But like he's one of those players where like Canucks fans obviously have like an obsession with finding those guys where like in spite of like maybe, being a fourth liner and like kind of getting caved in or just being like kind of like a grinder or whatever, Canucks Nation loves those players that like
Everybody
overcome and battle. Like
your fan, you got scrappy blue collar.
Everyone loves
guy.
the blue collar scrappy dude, and especially someone who's as open as he is about like his mental health issues, especially like just seeing a guy like that get the opening goal on Hockey Talks night and then score another one after. Like that's so cool.
He's an easy fan favorite, an easy
absolutely
player to love. Like you could not want anything but success for Tyler Motte. He's just one of those guys.
Yeah,
and he's looked so good. He's looked so good doing it on that bottom six. Like he's really brought an added offensive element to that bottom group, which was really missing last year. And then in the playoffs, he was just absolutely great in the playoffs. And you kind of thought, well, maybe this is just kind of what it is. And then he got the contract, and then he got the $1.25 million contract, which was a little bit of a surprisingly high raise. But
maybe they just knew.
Maybe they
knew he was going to light it up.
Well, there has been talk that I think Benning really banked on him becoming kind of this sort of a player. And hey, if that's how it's gone, great work. Like that's the kind of piece that you need in your bottom six. A guy who is relatively good, who's not necessarily maybe he's been getting in I don't know his advanced stats. Maybe he hasn't been
they're never really great, but
they're never great. Yeah.
But like if you're scoring on the opportunities that you do create for yourself, then hell yeah, keep at it.
Especially when they're far and few between based on who your matchups usually are. Like that's the kind of production that you need, and that wins championships. You need guys who can fill that role for a little bit of time that really, really are not minuses on the ice, but are making sure that they're putting pucks in the net and contributing offensively when you need to. Motte has lived up to his contract so far. So far he's living up to it and then some almost. Just the way that he's played. With 5 goals in 10 games, like that's way more than you expect out of any Canuck bottom depth guy right now.
I think they said that he's like a few goals away. Or no, he is. He's surpassed his goal total from last season. Like already. Like in 10 games. And like
that's fantastic.
Yeah, you can be like maybe he just thrives when there's no crowd. Like he just loves the silence of like an empty arena, so that's why he was so good in playoffs, and that's why he's so good now too. It's just like there's no one to boo him. It's all just like
I mean, who's going to boo Tyler Motte? But yes, your point does stand that like maybe he just really likes playing in a quieter. It's much more zen. It's much more calm. You know,
the only thing he can hear is Jay Beagle telling him to wheel.
Yeah,
and he hears that and he just says, "Okay."
That and a pin drop in the upper deck. He can just hear that. Like his sound, his senses are just much more in tune with the environment. Like maybe that's what we're going for.
That's all it is. It's just the meditation paying off.
Yeah, and what's great now, especially the way that the Canucks, the bottom six, or top six, I should say, has shaped up a little bit in the last couple of games. He doesn't have to be asked to contribute more than his weight. He doesn't have to be asked to pull more than his weight, which he was kind of doing for the early part there. He was doing a lot more. I think that first game against Ottawa, where the Lotto Line was still relatively cold, he looked really good and was contributing.
Yeah. No, the bottom six has been like really good.
Yeah,
like
and you
throw the asterisk out like they're getting outshot, but like whatever, like who cares? They're always going to get outshot. It's just like the way they play. But like when they get their chances, the bottom six is producing and they're battling. Like you can tell there's a compete there that like the teams of old like just straight up didn't have. Like Brandon Press, like
Brandon Press,
garbage.
Oh my god. Oh dear. Why did you have to remind me of that era?
My bad.
Yeah, but I mean, this is very much kind of a similar problem, almost to this similar case of what like the Maple Leafs were for right when they got into like the Austin Matthews era, where they were just where they were just scoring at will. Like that top six was scoring at will, but their back end and their defense were just getting destroyed.
Just
and
accomplishing nothing. Yeah.
And every single game was like 7-5 or like 8-7. Like that
fun games to watch, but frustrating as all fuck if you're a Leafs fan.
And as a goalie, you're just having an anxiety attack the whole time watching it because you're like, what is this? Give your goalie at least a little bit of help here. But right now, the Canucks are very much in that case where the defense is getting caved in on a regular basis, like even against Ottawa, which is very concerning. Yeah. But they're contributing and scoring, which is more than you could say about teams of the past. They're actually making a difference, and when they're getting the rare opportunities that they're connecting, and it's working. Yeah. And eventually the bottom's going to fall out. Well, maybe not fall out, but it'll gradually dip.
There will be a regression, right? Like just kind of like last year, Pettersson had like an on-ice shooting percentage of like 22% or something. Like there's some stats that just aren't sustainable, and they're going to regress to like a normal like rate. And that's kind of like the fourth line right now. It's like, is it sustainable that Motte is shooting or scoring like in like 5 goals in 10 games? Like I doubt it. They'll probably regress a bit. It's kind of like that one game where like Tim Schaller had 2 goals in a single game, and it was like, who is this guy?
That's right. Looked like Drancer was going to win that.
Yeah, he was going to win.
It really did.
And then he got
traded.
Yeah, he got traded. But like, it's the same thing for Motte, where you're like, he's looked impressive. The fourth line, like all things considered, has looked impressive enough where you're like, okay, maybe it isn't going to be like, when's the shoe going to drop kind of moment. Like this might be just like what they can accomplish when they're actually firing on all cylinders. Like who knows? I'm all for it.
You might get to a point where you actually start looking at the ideas of, okay, can we surround Tyler Motte with more well scoring and well offensively minded people, sort of thing. Not necessarily that you're building a line around Tyler Motte, but the idea that you're necessarily seeing, okay, we see a scenario where we now have an extra scoring line, where we could field an extra scoring line with the right pieces. Mm-hmm. Like I think Motte right now is playing with
Beagle
Gaudette.
And he's playing with Beagle and Roussel.
Okay, he's playing with Beagle and Roussel
exclusively.
So maybe you look at like maybe eventually it gets to a point where you bump him up to that third pairing. Maybe with like just if it works out that way, and you can kind of say, well, we've got him there, we've got Gaudette.
Yeah.
I guess he'd be taking McEwen's spot right now, or is McEwen playing on the left?
That's kind of the crazy thing about like the fourth line right now, is they're scoring at a way better rate than the like what you would technically call the third line, which is like Gaudette, McEwen, and Sutter. Like Sutter had his breakout game, but like that line is pretty much just spending their entire shifts chasing the puck. Like they never have possession.
Yeah.
And like you admire them, like you admire McEwen and Gaudette for like, they're skating hard, they're battling, and
and normally
whatever.
They're decent. Normally
they're okay.
They're having a little bit of a weird start.
But they do not touch the puck. Like
not right now, no.
Just watch, like, to any of our listeners, just watch every Gaudette shift and count how many seconds he's actually holding the puck. Because it's like it'll be like 1, 2, gone.
Now, how much of that is based off of what they've coached that line to do, specifically because they have a Brandon Sutter centering them down the middle? Like, if you had somebody a little bit quicker, a little bit lighter footed in that third Sutter pairing and that third line center, do you maybe see them attack more and put a little bit more emphasis on actually putting the puck in the net? Versus right now, where they're kind of just treading water. They're kind of just out there to kind of kill a little bit of extra time, more or less.
Maybe, because like I think Gaudette typically, like, his success came from not being a distributor. Like realistically, like Gaudette's ceiling would be like basically what Brandon Sutter is like a guy who isn't a distributor but has like great hands and can score. Yes. And so he needs someone like a facilitator that can do that for him. So that's why like a lot of people are like, okay, move Gaudette to the wing, because he's going to find more success as someone who can just like dish pucks and try and score, instead of a guy who's going to, battle on loose pucks and like be the guy that's passing and setting up plays. Like that's never been his jam. And that's why that third line with those three is super awkward to watch, because it's just like you're just waiting for the clock to tick down, and then the fourth line comes out to actually like do something, which is saying something.
Which is saying something, especially because Jay Beagle hasn't looked very good to start the year either. I wouldn't.
No,
say. He's been a bit of a black hole on that line, weirdly, but like again, Tyler Motte's been finding his lanes. Antoine Roussel has struggled a little bit, but I think they're not. But it hasn't bit them. It hasn't bit them too badly yet.
No.
But yeah, maybe that's something the Canucks need to look at as you get closer to February in that trade deadline. Maybe finding somebody who's not necessarily like a crazy big pickup, obviously, because you don't need anybody who's going to be taking Horvat or Pettersson's spot. But maybe you look at finding something kind of small, like a guy who's maybe a little undervalued, a little bit.
Maybe
better
you trade
as a
Virtanen and you get someone that can actually provide for your lineup. Which brings us to like our next topic of conversation, which is Virtanen getting healthy scratched against the worst team in the league.
Yes,
like
him and a lot of people. There's a
if Levy gets scratched, like I get it. He does not have the foot speed to be an NHLer. He has like a bunch, like great for him for scoring his first NHL goal against, again, the Senators. But like obviously there's huge trust issues there, and the Canucks aren't better served having Levy in the lineup and sheltering him against like the worst players on the worst team in Canada. And instead, you play a Chatfield or whatever, and you can prescribe no more normalized minutes and not have to baby someone the entire game. Virtanen couldn't crack that lineup, which is like shocking.
He played the first two games. He played the first two games, but we talked about allegedly, exactly, because we talked about how invisible he was out there.
When we were doing our recaps and talking, we were like, "Oh right, Virtanen played." Yeah, because he is an absolute ghost out there.
Yeah,
he does not do anything. I could not tell you a single play he had. He had one back check where he swept the puck after skating into his own zone. That was it.
Whereas Gaudette, when he plays, you notice immediately the energy and the kind of a little bit of the edge he brings to that group when he's out there. Even if he's not necessarily putting points on the board.
Even if he's not touching the puck either, like he's trying to make something happen. Whereas Virtanen is just floating.
Yeah. Now, some players thrive on not being heard from a lot. Like, that's kind of sometimes the best thing you can have for certain players is if you're not hearing them regularly, that's good that you're not hearing them, because if you are, it's probably because they're making a mistake. With Virtanen, it's very much a mixture of you are not noticing him do anything good, and on the rare occasion that you do notice him, it's for something that isn't great. And it's becoming a bit of an issue because he is somebody that you should be hearing from regularly.
Especially considering the team like prioritized re-signing him and getting him a 2-year deal over like Troy Stetcher, who would be someone they could use right now. Yes. Given Hamonic looked really bad. Yeah, there's a few games, and then.
Oh yeah, I forgot Hamonic's on the team. It's been that long.
Honestly, I feel like Jordy Ben has supplanted him as Hughes' partner. Which
is something you did not see coming. That was not
exactly
something you saw coming.
I was convinced Levy and Ben and Chatfield were just basically like bench warmers. Like there was no way they would slide into the lineup. Mm-hmm. But Hamonic did not look good at all, and Ben has looked basically as stable, if not more reliable than Chris Tanev was. He's looked good.
Ooh, yeah, okay.
He's looked really good.
Okay. Yeah, he's looked good for that. He's fit very well in that spot. He really has. Yeah. And yeah, I guess one thing, there was a quote that I saw posted on Twitter today, but this is from Thomas Durant's The Armies last night.
Great Armies, by the way.
Great Army.
Phenomenal ending.
Phenomenal.
Love the manifesto.
Oh my God. I don't think I've gotten to that full part yet. I have to finish it.
When we're done recording this episode, I
will read it.
It's a work of art.
I'm sure it is. But the one quote I wanted to point out was, for now, is a quote. This is from the end of like a Jake Virtanen topic that Drance went into. For now, though, the Canucks have 2 top 6 picks, Virtanen and Olli Juolevi, in addition to Louis Eriksson, the biggest free agent signing of Jim Benning's tenure, all sitting as healthy scratches against one of the worst teams in the league. That's a tough look. And it's true. Like, this is very bad.
It's bad.
Like, this is very indicative. This is a huge red flag for the management for their tenure. And we already talked about plenty of times about how Jim Benning's in a little bit of trouble. Definitely got cooled off by winning 3 straight.
A bit of ice water thrown on the hot seat, but
which is maybe a good thing because right now they don't need any more dysfunction.
Yeah.
But you're coming up again. We said they're not going to play Ottawa again for another month. And what happens if they go on a similar kind of run here against a bunch of teams that are much better and are much more primed to kick your ass if you're not playing at 100%. So you hope that this is the start of something good. And you do wonder now that if this is the case with Jake Virtanen, is how quickly and what kind of timeline do you see his time in Vancouver coming to?
Man, like, I think if you're another GM in the league and you're seeing Jake Virtanen not even sliding into the lineup against the Ottawa Senators, and instead you have like some undrafted free agent from the major junior league of the Maritimes, like earning a spot convincingly and playing better than Jake Virtanen really was, you're not going to be trading for him. Like, you're just looking at Jake and you're like, why would I give up an asset for this guy who's not going to offer anything against the worst team in the NHL right now?
Yeah.
Like, what good is he going to do? Like, if you're in the Metropolitan Conference or whatever, you're like, okay, what's he going to do against the Capitals? What's he going to do against Pittsburgh or, Boston or Philly? Like, you got nothing.
Literally the 2 pitches Jim Benning can make right now for Virtanen, for moving Virtanen, if that was the direction they decided to go, the only 2 pitches they have right now is, one, if a team is having issues with like COVID or injuries, they can go, he's a body, he's an extra body for you. Like, he will help you in that he is NHL experienced and that he will help you fill a need while, say, you have somebody out of the lineup or something, right?
Yeah.
And then your second option is basically to go, and this is the one that I've talked about before, which is that it hasn't worked here, but we think it could work somewhere else. Because I do think I don't think it is. I think playing in Vancouver. I refuse to believe
he's going to show more.
I very much believe that he played somewhere else. It would be a wake-up call for him, and that he'd kind of I don't think he'd hit a higher ceiling necessarily. I just think he'd find more consistency, and he'd find a consistent spot in the NHL, which he doesn't have here. No. I think playing in Vancouver and playing in his hometown market has kind of hurt him a little bit. I think he would do better in a place where he's not under the watchful eye of all of us as much. But, okay, please do. Please tell me why I'm wrong here. Go ahead.
I think you spent too much time in San Jose, and you don't realize that Abbotsford is not the same as a hometown of Vancouver.
That's why they drafted
Abbotsford
him.
Is like,
they drafted him because he's the hometown kid. You can't tell me this isn't my thinking. This isn't my thinking. This is literally the management's thinking and the whole reason they signed him. Well, you can't look at me like that's like I'm crazy.
They should have checked a map because Abbotsford is not part of the Lower Mainland, okay? Abbotsford is like an hour something drive from Rogers Arena. So that's not a hometown kid.
You cannot look me in the eye and tell me that nearly everyone in this market looks at Jake Virtanen as the hometown product. Whether or not you agree with that thinking is not the case here. I'm talking about the fact that all of us, lots of people in the media, including myself, including lots of fans, including lots of people on Twitter, look at him as a Vancouver kid. He's looked at that way. You can't deny that.
Those people also,
and he probably does too. he probably considers himself too, which I think matters.
Well, I bet he doesn't even know how to spell map, okay? So
oh my god.
The issue here is the actual hometown kid was Troy Stecher.
Burning bridges. Good lord.
There's hometown kids who are like a 10-minute drive from the arena, and that's Troy Stecher. And they got rid of him because he wasn't tall enough. And instead they prioritized Jake Virtanen, who is floating against one of the worst teams the NHL has seen in the last 3 years. And I think it is the market, the fan base, and the management team. I think it's their fault for realizing that Abbotsford is not the same as the lower mainland of BC. That is like
that doesn't change my point. That doesn't
world.
Change my point, which is that he's playing in a market that considers him a homegrown talent and keeps a very close eye on everything he does because of that. Like,
this kid does not give a shit about being a hometown kid. He's garbage. He's never going to make it in the NHL with his attitude or his work ethic.
I mean, he already has made it in the NHL. He's already been in the NHL for 200
for the exact
games.
Reasons that you keep saying, because he's a hometown kid and that they are desperate to try and make him work, and they are operating out of fear that he will just somehow turn into Tom Wilson, the next team.
That is a guaranteed
nonsense.
Why he's still here. That's
It's
guaranteed, and that's
nonsense.
why I'm saying they need to move on, because that's never going to happen here. That's never. And people, and I say this all, and I always like preface it by saying that if that happened, we wouldn't be able to get mad about it retroactively that he turned into this player, because it was never going to happen. It would be really funny, though. I don't think he's going to ever get to that point, but I think he could at least be steady in a role on some other team. I do think that is, you can't tell me that Jake Virtanen on like Detroit wouldn't be a decent player by Detroit standards, or even by Ottawa's standards. You don't think Ottawa would be fine having a Jake Virtanen on their third line? Come on.
Did you watch the Senators? They actually try. They're bad at it, but they actually try on their shifts. They have a bunch of kids battling to actually try and score. Like Jake Virtanen, what happened to that part? Try.
What happened to? Remember that part earlier in the show where you said, "I don't wish anything bad on these players." I feel like you're really going against that right now.
I'm speaking in hyperbole.
Okay. This is your bit. This is a bit.
This is my bit. This is my shtick.
Okay, understood.
Being over the top critical of Jake Virtanen.
This is your old man Makar. Got it.
This is my old man yells at Sky, and except I'm yelling at Jake Virtanen for just getting outplayed by like undrafted free agents in like an unheard of truncated season where you're playing one of the worst teams in the NHL more than you'll ever play them again. And you can't even muster an effort to like stay on the fourth or third line. Like, you're losing out to guys that like can't even score right now. Like, that's how pathetic you've been playing.
Yeah, it has been a very bad start. I think I don't think we've seen the last of Jake Virtanen, but
he's on a 2-year deal. No one's going to sign him, or no one's going to take that deal on.
Someone might take it on a flyer. It's 2 years. It's not that long. Like, especially if you look at it based on this is for some teams, this is a wash of a year anyway, because it's COVID. Yeah. Like, if you look at it going into next year, it's a 1-year deal that you could easily find a fit for somewhere if you're a team that just kind of needs cap room or whatever.
You're probably paying a premium to get rid of that deal, though.
That's the kicker. Is can you move him for something that isn't completely detrimental to you? Like, can you actually get an asset, a good asset, a fair asset back for him, and not just be trying to get rid of him? That's the hard part, and that's why the sales pitch is what matters.
The problem is that second year of the deal, because it's like 1.55 million or something like that.
That's manageable. That's manageable for a team. Like, it's not.
Oh, sorry. It's 2.55 million. For a guy who might not even crack your fourth line, that's tougher. That's
much tougher. That's much tougher. You'd have You'd have to
maybe
retain.
if Jim Benning moves on to another team, he'll take that deal on because he's so used to taking deals like that in his fourth line, worse
Maybe.
deals in his
He
fourth
might.
line. So he
Maybe.
might think it's a bargain contract.
Maybe.
But other teams are going to look at that and be like, why would I commit to a guy who can't even crack the lineup?
Yeah. Again, the sales pitch would really.
The sales pitch would be tough.
Good. It'd have to be good. It'd have to be incredible. But I think we're.
Speaking of pitches, here's a good transition for you.
Oh boy!
So it would have to take a really good presentation and pitch to get Jake Virtanen and that contract signed for a fair deal in exchange without paying a premium. Mm-hmm. I think the person to maybe put that pitch together would be the son of former Canucks GM Mike Gillis and Spencer Gillis.
Okay. Tell me about this because I missed this.
You missed gold, man.
I was at work. I was at work during this whole fiasco, and all I saw was the aftermath of like Taj going like, "This is a moment in Canucks lore forever now," and I'm like, "What did I miss? Like, what incredible thing did I miss?"
So for people that did miss it like you, basically what happened was Spencer Gillis, who is on Canucks Twitter, he's actively engaging and like memeing and stuff like that. He dropped a Google Drive link to a PDF presentation that was basically like here I am, Mike Gillis, applying for the role of Pittsburgh Penguins GM in the wake of Jim Rutherford stepping down.
Oh my God.
And it was like 27 slides, like fully mapped out, like organizational hierarchy charts, like just strategies, plans to integrate like analytics and stats and stuff like this into all aspects of their management team. And it was like you finish reading it and you're like, wow, like any team that gets Mike Gillis in there as their GM is like going to be stoked at the way this guy wants to like think the game. And after like an hour and a half or something of this thing being up, Spencer Gillis took it down and deleted it. There's like kind of like
a while.
It was up for like a good like half an hour to an hour. Like it was up for a little bit.
I thought it was like a 10-minute bit and it was gone.
It was up for a while.
I really missed it. Oh my God.
Yeah. It was up from like 2:00 until like 3:30. I know that because I was at work when I first saw it pop up and I stayed half an hour late and was like, oh my God, what the hell is this?
That's fantastic.
But yeah, eventually got deleted. And there's kind of like I made the joke that like that Spencer got grounded by his dad, and that's why it got taken down because his dad was like that famous tweet from Spencer Gillis where he's like, "I see you've been tweeting."
Yeah.
Yeah, he said that, and then he tweeted that like snapshot, like so. That's really funny.
Yeah.
But like
that did
Canucks
turn out
lore 100%.
Now, according to the armies today, that was an accident. Was it apparently like it was an accident? Like he did.
It wasn't. I'll defer to Drance.
Well, we'll just have to get Drance to come on the show. We'll just have to get Drance to come on the show and explain it. Like, I'll call him right now.
He said it was. Yeah, I just have his number sitting on my. Actually, I think I do. Actually, from the
you probably do. I don't though. I sure don't.
But yeah. If I think it was on Reddit, someone did clip all the 27 slides. So if you go to the Canucks subreddit, like you can find it. It's like, like even if it's like just a meme or like a joke that like Spencer Gillis put out, and it's just like quotes he found of his dad's, like it's a really like well put together presentation, like just like an interesting look into like how CEOs market themselves to other CEOs. Basically, it's really fascinating to read. I was like enthralled reading the entire thing.
It almost makes me wonder if Mike Gillis, because of the fact that Mike Gillis does things so differently, when he was the GM of the Canucks, did things so differently compared to other hockey GMs, I almost wonder if that's a rarity. Like if that kind of comprehensive presentation is a rarity for a general manager, because I feel like so many of these guys don't come in that prepared. Like they don't seem to come in with that level of preparation for the job. They just kind of go, here's my plan. It's written down on like a page on a Word document, and that's it. Like it doesn't seem like
I loved. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I want to hear what you had to say. Go.
I was gonna say, so I think it was Mike K Mode on Twitter tweeted out like Jim Benning's application
no.
for a GM job, and it's like written on a paper towel in pen, and everything's spelt wrong, and it's like I like tall players, and like general managers spelt like GENIRIL. It's
This is
you
a
find
robbery.
it is so funny. It's so good, dude.
That's very funny. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do wonder if he's like, because that looked extensively put together, like from the bits that I've seen. Because again, I've only seen a few that were screen grabbed. First of all, guys, if you have Google Drive, you got to know you can, even if it's a read-only document, you can make a copy. You can make a copy. Did nobody figure that out, that you can just make a copy? Because I haven't seen a copied Google Drive one yet. I'm surprised. I was like, people have to know. Like this, clearly I missed out because I would have known to do that. But somebody got like screen grabs of it.
Screen grabs are out there. So if you look on the Canucks subreddit, you can get it. And yeah, just from like a business standpoint, like it's a really interesting read. And if it's Spencer Gillis just like memeing and like trolling Canucks fans, like he did an absolute bang up job, because it's just wonderfully put together. Yeah.
What if the actual GM candidate was Spencer Gillis all along? Maybe
that would be the biggest troll of all time. That'd be pretty unreal.
High comedy. He's just like actually like using like he's actually just making slides as his dad like for a little bit and being like. And then they like open the door. It's like, it's me. I'm the actual GM candidate here. Now, and I guess
me.
It me. Now, I feel like we can transition from here into the whole Jim Rutherford stepping down as Penguins GM, because that came out of left field. Mm-hmm. And that's why that whole Gillis thing came out in the first place, is just because, you know, now there's the whole aspect of could he be the one that takes over. From what I heard, I guess he actually more wants like a president of hockey ops role rather than a GM role, which would still work for the Penguins, because with Rutherford stepping down, they have neither. But as far as the Penguins of now are concerned, they're in a bit of a tough spot. But again, it's one that you can very much get out of with the fact that you have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin forever.
Yeah.
How do you think? What would your consideration of like Jim Rutherford's legacy be with that team? I mean, 2 Stanley Cups, but a lot of questions in between.
It would be all the awful moves he just made in this past offseason. Like
got rid of Jack Johnson
after acquiring him.
Yeah. Whoops.
Like,
was that year 1
acquiring
or year 2?
Good Branson because Pearson was having like a bad season with like a bum hand. Like
one of Jim Benning's best trades, like hands down.
If you just ignore all the build up to it, it was like a really good trade. But
that was a hands down good trade.
But yeah, like I don't have much to say on like Jim Rutherford's like dismissal or firing or like quitting on his own volition. Like I read something out there that was like he wanted to trade Chris Letang, and ownership was like, nope, that's not going to happen, and so he quit because he was like, I guess
they tried to fix
that. I'm not going to get interfered with, which like fair enough.
Yeah, good.
But
yeah, fair enough.
Given his recent trade history, I wouldn't be trusting that guy to trade away like one of your premier defensemen over the last decade, who is obviously falling off, but like you don't want your
not the one
rabid fan base. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Maybe Gillis gets an option, but
he also signed Cody Ceci this year,
and Brandon Tanev to a 7-year deal or 5-year deal or whatever it was.
Brandon Tanev has done surprisingly well, actually. I think he 3.5, but a long.
You would too if you were getting that giant deal.
Yeah, long contract, $3.5 million per for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I'll say this for Jim Rutherford. He was a guy who had the right idea for a good amount of time, and then really, really, really went into the if it ain't broke, I'm still gonna try and fix it anyway sort of mode. Like the Penguins in those first few years where they won the back-to-back Stanley Cups, the thing they thrived on most was speed and offensive ability.
And then everyone got old.
Everyone got old, but they also traded a lot of their young guys, their younger, speedy guys, and replaced them with older, harder hitting, hard nosed guys, which really destroyed the chemistry in that locker room. And they had a well-oiled machine for 2 years, the best.
Yeah, their back-to-back years, like they were
unbeatable.
A machine.
But
now, like their goalie situation, like Tristan Jarry, like isn't as good as I think they expected him to be.
I think
he's going to have some growing pains, but
I think he'll be good if you give him the time. I think Tristan Jarry is a little bit more in the.
But if they're scared of getting rid of Chris Letang, then that kind of tells you where they think they are in their current arc.
Right.
They might not be looking to wait. So.
And that's largely self-inflicted because they were doing fine. If you had held on to that kind of core belief that your best skills are your speed, your agility, and your offensive abilities, they would be doing just fine right now. Like they maybe wouldn't be a cup favorite every year, but they would be doing decently. Like they'd be all right. They really fell off. The wheels completely fell off for the Penguins when Jim Rutherford started going, well, this team isn't gritty enough. Like we have this other stuff. We need grit, and they started trading. And they traded for Ryan Reeves, and that didn't work. They went for Jack Johnson. They went for Eric Branson. There were just a lot of pickups that didn't make much sense for what their core skills and their core team structure was, and it really, really went south fast for them to the point now where I would not be surprised if they didn't make the playoffs this year by any stretch. Like I wouldn't be shocked at all by that. Yeah. And you kind of you hope for the Crosby and Malkin aspect of it that they kind of find their way back a little bit quickly because the NHL is worse off without them in the postseason than it is without them. Mm-hmm. So you really do hope that whoever comes in, and they have a lot of work to do, comes in and finds that chemistry again for them.
Yeah. Well, I think there's just one more thing we want to go over, and that's more games getting postponed.
Oh boy.
Because of COVID outbreaks. I don't want to spend too much time on this just because
it's sad.
I think this is such a positive episode that it would almost be like detrimental to like how happy we're feeling after
we have two things we could end on that are a little bit more fun. Other than that after this. So there's that as well. But we'll do this now and we'll get the bad part out of the way.
But yes, Golden Knights games were postponed because their coaching staff had COVID-19 and they had to run a bench that was like half AHL team and half their management staff. And they still won because they're the Knights and whatever. But like,
and then player tested positive, I think, yesterday.
Yes, so now
which made things a whole lot worse.
The U.S. schedule is just like a complete mess. I'm getting to the point where I'm wondering if they can even shift games around anymore. Like they need to finish a 56 game schedule in 102 days or something like that, or 100 now. You can't have like the players are going to fight back and be like, there's no way we can do back-to-backs every single week, like 3 times a week, basically. It's not going to happen.
No.
Eventually they're going to have to start shaving down the schedule is my guess. And it's going to get into a really big gray area.
Oh, you think they'll shave games out? You think they'll actually cut games?
I think they'll have to.
Interesting.
Because like, if you have like a bunch of players or they get into like the football scenario where they're like, okay, whoever's healthy, you're still playing. If it's all your taxi squad guys sliding in, then that's what it's going to have to be, but we can't change the schedule anymore. But that's optically like a disaster for the NHL. So I think the compromise would have to be, we'll start shaving games off the schedule.
I think it's okay. I think it's going to go the other way, which it's just they're going to keep that schedule. They're going to sit firm on the 56 games. They're just going to really just start pushing the weeks a little bit down. Like when they said right now, I think it's supposed to end like the week of May 2nd. I want to say I think like the first Sunday of May, which I think is that's the 2nd. I think it ends right there. I think right now it ends there. I think you're looking at a scenario where the league just goes, okay, now we're moving it to the season ending the 9th or something to fit the final couple games that we need to into the schedule, or the 16th if it gets to that point, sort of thing. I think that's what you're going to end up seeing, because as long as you're not worried once you again, we're getting closer to the point where I think less COVID outbreaks are going. The COVID outbreaks will start being far and few between. It might be harder to say that. Better said than done for the U.S.
I
particularly.
don't know about that one, man.
Because I mean, look at the Canadian teams are doing fine right now. They had some troubles out of the gate.
I wonder why.
But yeah, you wonder why the Canadian teams are all healthy and their schedule is relatively untouched. Like, I think aside from like one Jets game or something getting moved. Overall, they've done pretty well. I think if you get farther like into like that 20-30 game mark, once you get into like that 20-30 game mark, they won't be dealing with it anymore, and it'll just be a case of, okay, we just need one more week to kind of sprinkle these last few games into, and that's just what we're gonna do. The playoffs just move that one extra week down, call it a day. Because I think they're pretty firm on getting the 56 games in.
For sure. Well, speaking of pushing the week down, let's talk about quickly Matthew Tkachuk getting a puck flipped on him and then getting ragdolled and embarrassed by Jake Muzzin and the entire Toronto Maple Leafs.
And then Brady Tkachuk doing the same thing with Zach McEwen, which was very funny.
Yeah, not a great week for the Tkachuk family.
No, they had a tough week.
I don't think about the Canucks as much as the NHL does. They obviously love their dynasty. It's obnoxious, so I don't want to spend any time talking about them, but it was just kind of funny seeing them both spaz out like little wimps, basically.
It was especially funny because you know that they would do the exact same thing if the tables were turned. So to see them being able to like not like to dish it out but not take it back is
it was so funny.
It was high comedy.
So funny. Like just the exact same like rage too on the bench when they're both punching like inanimate objects. It was just like, chef's kiss, just so beautiful to watch two kids like react the same way when they finally have something thrown back at them, the same kind of crap they'd pull every single time they were winning or doing well. So it's just like,
now
it's beautiful.
And particularly with Matthew, you wonder how quickly teams are going to immediately just start doing that, like trying as hard as they can to throw him off, because it seems like, because it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to take him off, and as soon as you do that, you've thrown him off his game by that point, because you might see teams just immediately be like, oh, we found the Achilles heel, and just start at nausea just going at him and just doing like really small things that are just like little, I guess, microaggressions that really just get his goat, and all of a sudden he's a complete non-factor.
The risk with Matthew Tkachuk, though, is that he's such a hothead, and we've seen him do some pretty like kind of greasy things. Like, you don't want him to kind of go overboard with like the retaliation, because you know he'd be the type where like if people were going at him just to rile him up, he would like run a goalie or whatever,
or
jump on some dude's head or land on someone's head like he did with Hamonic, right? So
so you do worry about that.
See, though.
But now the fact is that not only is that just even with all that, now everybody is so looking forward to the next time Toronto and Calgary play, which I think is a few weeks from now. And I really wanted to ask you, so far, now that we're really into the season, now that we're really fully into the NHL season, we've seen what the Canadian division is. How are you liking the setup and the way that they've done this?
I mean, I think the schedule is kind of messy, to be honest. Like, I think regardless, you're going to have like heated rivalries, even without like teams playing, like 4 games in a row. Like, it was going to happen regardless, just because these guys are going to see each other anyway. Like, if you were even doing like one game against each opponent in a bubble and you were just constantly rotating, you'd still have the same kind of animosity carrying over the next time they saw each other. So like, I don't quite get it. Obviously it's like travel based, but I don't know. It's fine.
But do you like seeing this many games? Do you like seeing all the Canadian teams play each other so regularly? Do you like the kind of animosity that's coming out of it and the kind of hockey we're getting, the brand of hockey we're getting?
Well, here's the thing. Like, if the Canucks were terrible, like if they were as bad as the Senators, I would hate this. This would be miserable to watch.
Right.
But fortunately, they're at least scoring a ton of goals and it's interesting. If they weren't, I would be like, this is just I would not be watching. It would be so boring and lifeless to me. Like,
Yeah.
I would not care. But fortunately,
the
that's
thing-
not the case.
Yeah, the thing we've really seen, especially in that Canucks Senators series, is there's a big difference between, say, a team like the Canucks that's just really struggling, that's really desperately struggling, and a team like Ottawa that's just bad. Like,
Yeah.
there's still a clear barrier between those two.
With the
which is-
struggle, at least it's like you're seeing some kind of on ice rewards for their effort. Like with a team that's just as bad as Ottawa, where there's clearly like the 6 other teams and then Ottawa, and you're hoping you get 1 or 2 wins here or there. That would be just horrible.
It's nuts that the Canucks were the first team to really beat up on them so far, because the other teams, because they made a game with all the other teams, they were making them a game. The Canucks are just the first team to really just take them to the wood chipper for 3 straight. I will say that I'm loving this. I think it's really fun. I think the added rivalry, especially between the Canadian teams, groups teams that we don't get to see very often, like Montreal and Toronto and Ottawa, is fun. And I really like the added aspect of playing them on a regular basis and what it's kind of bringing to like the online aspect of it, like on Twitter and everything. I think the engagement is really up there, and I think it's almost like it's more heated, but it's also still like really, really fun between everybody. And I think this is like, I doubt this is something I'd want to see on a regular basis. It's just like for 1 year, it's very fun. And I'm going to enjoy the hell out of this, especially as we start getting into the Toronto, I think comes up next week, which is going to be chaos.
Yeah.
That's going to be chaos, like unlike anything you've ever seen. Unless it turns out into like that first Edmonton Leafs game where it was just a complete dud for 60 minutes. But then you look at the game last night between Edmonton and Toronto, where it was just a zoo for 60 minutes. Like the last period was just completely nuts. I like this setup. I'm enjoying it. I think I'm going to, no matter, even if the Canucks do end up getting like their asses kicked by the other 5 teams, I think I'd still enjoy the overall like stories and the experience of it all as we get into from here until we get into May.
Hell yeah. Well, I think that about wraps up our episode for today, everybody. We're glad we have some good news for you for a change. We get to review some fun and like actually have fun talking about wins instead of like terrible back-to-back embarrassments against like the Canadians. So this is good. This is great. We got to cross our fingers over the weekend that the good times keep rolling. Next up is Winnipeg, and then a game, the first of 2 games against the Habs again, I believe.
Yeah, in Montreal. They haven't
played so that's going to be pretty intense. I'm excited for the weekend. I hope everyone here enjoys their Saturday as they're listening this and the rest of their weekend. As always, rate and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening to us. You can subscribe to the CreaseCast YouTube channel and to our Patreon, where we have $1 tiers and $5 tiers with exclusive content from Lachlan Irvine himself. Lachlan, where can the fine folks listening to this program find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease, and you can find all my writing at lochandthecrease.com. I do the North Division Power Rankings every single Sunday, and I write regular full in-depth player articles and opinion articles from time to time. Cody, where can they find you?
The fine folks, the fans, our legions of fans can find me at Cody Sievertson. The swaths of fans. You can find me at Cody Sievertson on Twitter, not on Instagram, not on Reddit. But you can see my articles on thecommonsharvest.com, where I'll be starting to post game recaps starting next week and the week following.
Our next episode is going to be quite Comets. I'm sure there'll be a big Comets section in there for sure next week. We'll have to.
Might be.
Yeah.
But until that day comes, folks, we appreciate you. Thanks for the listens, everybody. We will see you next Wednesday for our next episode drop. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.